Lily Sullivan, a 32-year-old CEO who built a multi-million-dollar hospitality business in secret, has spent 15 years being treated as the invisible, servant-like older daughter by her wealthy parents, while her younger sister Sarah is publicly celebrated. When Lily is ordered to cook a high-profile Christmas Eve dinner for Sarah's VIP guests, including Victoria Chen, CEO of Pinnacle, she chooses to fly to Florida to close a $2 million contract instead. The resulting chaos at her parents' house, pizza on Waterford, China, humiliating insults, goes viral. Victoria recognizes Lily at the Pinnacle meeting, exposes the family's blindness, posts the partnership online, and Lily's Forbes cover follows. Lily's success humiliates her family publicly, forces reckonings, and eventually leads to negotiated boundaries and a redefined relationship. The elevator in Lily's Manhattan building smelled faintly of citrus and old rain. She stepped out into the hall with a single rolling suitcase and a leather portfolio tucked under her arm. The city below hadn't learned to slow for anyone. Taxis honked like impatient metronomes. Through the window of her two-bedroom, the tip of Central Park glinted gray, and the apartment felt quieter than usual. Success often was. On the kitchen counter, a vase of wilted tulips, a framed magazine clipping from Hospitality Quarterly, and, half hidden under a pile of takeout menus, an unpaid bill for an ad she'd once refused. They were tokens of a life she'd built with other people's belief. Her phone vibrated. Mum. For 15 years the name had been a small hammer. Lily accepted the weight of it and answered. Lily, cancel everything tomorrow, Margaret's voice said like a serrated edge. Sarah is hosting. Important guests. 12 noon. You'll be here to cook. Lily balanced the portfolio so it pressed into her palm. Mom, I told you, I have a meeting that can't be moved. I don't care what you have. Use the good china. This is about the family. Right then a message blinked on. A calendar notification from Pinnacle Hospitality. Final meeting with Victoria Chen. 9 a.m. December 26th FL. And, beneath it, a note from Maria, Lily's head chef. We're ready. James already rearranged ops. This is everything. Lily's throat tightened. Stellar Events had been 5 years of invisible sacrifices, of late nights, and of saying no when no one asked her to say yes. 50 employees. 3 kitchens. She kept the company separate because the world loved pedigrees. She preferred merit. You always say family, Lily said. Her voice felt like glass. But when has family ever asked what I'm doing? Have you ever been to one of my events? Margaret's laugh was a small weather system. We know you cook. That's how it's always been. Lily looked at the magazine clipping on the counter, her face older, steadier, beneath an article that called her a quiet revolutionary. She'd tucked it there months ago, thinking one day maybe someone at home would notice. They hadn't. Not really. She closed her suitcase. For a long time, her choice would have taken seconds. Acquiesce, disappear into their kitchen like she always had, sacrifice the meeting, smooth the family's fragile image. But behind the meeting, behind the contract, were names and mortgages and a head chef who'd mortgaged her future for this expansion. Behind the meeting was a collective risk. Mom, Lily said finally, I can't. I have to fly. Silence, and then the familiar weaponized disbelief. You can't. You owe us. Owe her? Oh? Lily pressed her fingers against the leather folder and felt the weight of every unpaid hour, each replaced trophy boxed in the basement. She could hear the hum of the city through the windows like a promise. I'm sorry, she said. I won't be there. The call ended. She stood very still, listening to the echo of the word sorry as if it could be rewound. In the silence, she opened the leather folder. Inside lay contracts, a printed itinerary, an email from Victoria that began, looking forward to meeting the founder who did it without family money. The phrase landed with an odd warmth. Lily slid the folder into her bag, checked the plane times, and placed one item on the counter, a crisp business card. Lily Sullivan, CEO, Stellar Events, face up against the magazine clipping. Not a demand. A quiet breadcrumb. She left a sticky note by the fruit bowl, emergency caterers, 24-hour list, phone numbers. Not cruelty. She never wanted to burn bridges she might need to cross. She simply stopped living in the kitchen. When the taxi pulled away, Manhattan blurred into streaks of light. Connecticut sat like a dark shape behind her, a house of ornaments and expectations. She felt oddly light. For the first time in years, there was a clear line between who she had to be and who she had allowed herself to be for the convenience of others. She closed her eyes and breathed in. Under the noise of engines, she heard her own heartbeat, steady, controlled, and utterly hers. The plane lowered toward Fort Lauderdale with the kind of dusk that flattened angles into watercolor. Lily watched the coastline slide by and thought of kitchen lights and china boxes and the tiny, humiliating rituals of belonging that had cost her a lifetime. Her phone buzzed with messages she left unanswered, a mother who spun narratives, a sister who saw only her reflection, an assistant with optimistic updates. She let them be. At the resort, the concierge led her through a hushed lobby into a hallway that smelled of salt and citrus and profit. Victoria Chen's assistant had sent a succinct itinerary: pre-meeting dinner, presentation, final signatures. Lily smoothed her skirt and stepped into the suite that looked like someone had curated success, floor-to-ceiling glass, a bottle of champagne with a handwritten card, "Welcome, VC." It felt like a stage. She rehearsed the opening line she'd used 100 times: "We scale luxury experiences with operational rigor," but her mind kept slipping back to the sticky note by the fruit bowl, a lifeline in case of emergency. She pictured Margaret in the dining room, the Waterford crystal catching candlelight, a table set to impress, a woman who had built a social persona on the backs of other people's labors. That evening, the pre-meeting dinner coalesced into a small, unexpected theater. Victoria arrived later than planned, hair slightly mussed, eyes bright with a story that wanted teeth. "You won't believe where I came from," she told Lily, half apologetic and oddly amused. "An elegant house in Connecticut. There should have been caviar. There was pizza on china." Lily masked nothing. She listened, and the picture unfurled: Margaret's proclamation of her daughter's unreliability, the buffet of cardboard boxes on mahogany, a woman loudly reassigning blame into scandal. Victoria's amusement softened into something like disbelief. "She said her daughter was mentally unstable," Victoria murmured. "And that she cooks for them because she's, well, limited." Lily felt the old humiliation burn and then strangely dissolve. It had always been their fantasy to keep her small. The narrative was familiar, a household story recited so often it became canonical. Except this time, the teller had misread the lead. They spoke about the contract like surgeons discussing a single organ to be transplanted. Victoria asked pointed questions about logistics, references, the team. And as the suite filled with conversations, Victoria's curiosity about Lily sharpened. She asked where the company started, how Lily financed growth, why they'd chosen to remain independent. Each answer was a small absolution, each detail a clean, sharp card dealt to the table that Margaret had never seen. That night Lily took a call from Maria. "We can do it," her head chef said. "If we sign, I can close on the house. We'll be ready. Come in tight. We need your signature." The pressure settled into something less personal, not revenge but stewardship. Lily's mind no longer hung on the memory of family forks and whispered assumptions. Her team mattered more than any family facade. It was a moral economy she'd chosen: protect the people who trusted you to feed them dreams and pay their mortgages. She slept with the city's faint roar behind her, and in the quiet of the suite she did something small that felt enormous. She composed a message to her mother. She didn't plead. She didn't apologize. She typed, succinct and cool, "I won't be at the dinner. I left numbers for emergency caterers. I'm sorry for the inconvenience." No pleading, no shrill apology, only a line that recognized the rupture and refused to repair itself on someone else's terms. By morning, the internet was already a rumor mill. An iPhone snapshot of pizza boxes on silver had found a way into a private online circle. Someone with a hungry finger was already spreading the story. Lily didn't check it yet. She had a presentation to deliver. When the boardroom settled, she realized the real build-up had been internal, a decision repeated in restless breaths, a life reassembled from fragments. She would present not only for a contract, but for the people who had built that contract with her hands. The stakes were no longer family shame. They were livelihoods, futures, a company that might finally cross a threshold into scale. And in the quiet before she spoke, Victoria leaned in and whispered, "You did the right thing." Lily's pulse steadied. Rightness is rarely neat. But it would do. Lily's opening slide glowed on the boardroom's curved screen, a single image of a dining room set by stellar events, every glass catching light like small planets. She began with the work, timelines, staffing matrices, risk mitigation. The Pinnacle executives leaned forward, pens in hand, their attention a currency she'd learned to earn. Midway through her pitch, the assistant bustled in holding an iPad like a lit flag. "Miss Chin, there's a post circulating," the assistant said, voice low but urgent. "Someone at last night's event posted this." Victoria took the device and scrolled. The room watched a photo bloom, Margaret Sullivan framed in a tableau of embarrassment, pizza boxes splayed like an offering across mahogany. For a half-second Lily felt something like déjà vu, but then the room inhaled. The legal counsel's pen paused, a senior VP's expression tilted from curiosity to something hotter. Victoria blinked at Lily, then laughed, not cruelly, but in disbelief so pure it sounded like an exhale. "That's your family," she said, as if the improbable had suddenly acquired a name. Her finger tapped an article preview. "Also, you might want to see this." The Forbes headline unfolded across the screen like a curtain. From invisible to invaluable, Lily Sullivan builds a catering empire without family money. The boardroom, used to forecasts and footnotes, found a different currency in that line. The room's air thickened with jokes waiting to be made and reputations about to be rearranged. Time folded. Victoria excused herself and dialed an old connection without preamble. Through the glass, Lily watched her speak into the phone like an old friend smoothing a wrinkle in cloth. She returned with the strangest expression, victory blurred with glee. "I just called Margaret Sullivan," Victoria announced. "I said I was disappointed in a recent event and hinted at taking business elsewhere. She begged me. I told her I'd just signed a deal with her elder daughter, Lily Sullivan, CEO of Stellar Events." It was the first time the words had been said aloud in that room with the force of a legal fact. Lily had built an identity in silence. Someone else had just attached it to her family name. Her phone began to shiver in her bag with missed calls, dozens, a frantic echo from Connecticut. The boardroom transformed, congratulations, handshakes, champagne. But for Lily, the real twist arrived in the form of a LinkedIn notification. Victoria had posted the signed deal with a photo of Lily holding the contract, captioned with praise. Within minutes the screen showed the post's likes and comments climbing. An unfamiliar sensation rippled through Lily's chest, vindication, yes, but also a fierce loneliness at the cost of exposure. Then came the legal whisper. Someone at Pinnacle nudged the conversation toward compliance and optics. "We have to be careful about family disclosures in the press," they said mildly. "But also, this is powerful." Outside the glass, an email from her PR manager glowed. Forbes cover confirmed. Midnight. The timeline collapsed. By sunrise, her family would see what the world already was learning. The midpoint twist wasn't merely that Lily's private life became public. It was that public exposure reframed every private slight into something legally and socially consequential. Margaret's narrative, my unreliable daughter, risked becoming a public caricature. Family myths have a curious solidity until someone with a megaphone points them out. In 36 hours, the social geometry of the Sullivan name would be different. In the altered landscape, choices would have consequences. Lily felt the gravity of being both catalyst and witness. There was a small, selfish thought that fluttered. What if she'd stayed? Would the pizza have been better? Would the family shame have been quieter? But then she thought of Maria, of James, of the team who'd staked futures on her decision. The twist was not a vindictive glee, it was a reallocation of truth. For the first time, the people who deserved revelation would get it, and the people who had benefited from erasing her would face their own reflection. She signed, accepted applause, and felt the world tilt not toward her, but toward a truth that could no longer be contained. Word spread with the efficiency of rumors, a LinkedIn announcement here, a forwarded Forbes preview there. By noon, Lily's phone was a small chorus of pings, congratulations, interview requests, incredulous texts from old clients. But beneath the professional clamor was a hard, bitter undertow, her family's panic unfolding in real time. Margaret's calls were relentless, each one more theatrical than the last. Sarah's messages shifted from furious to pleading to performative guilt as strands of pride and fear tangled together. The country club that had once been a bastion of their social power hummed with speculation. Old friends sent feigned concern. Whales of gossip circled like aerial predators. Lily could have watched the fallout like a detached filmmaker, cataloging each beat. Instead, she found herself stepping into a role she had long rehearsed, but hadn't needed to play publicly: translator. People called to ask what happened. Lily told them plainly, "I had a meeting. I chose to honor my employees' futures." The sentence was small and steady. It reframed private negligence as a broader moral failure. At home, consequences bit. Sarah's PR retainer with an important client was terminated on ethics grounds. Board members quietly resigned from Margaret's charity committees. The dinners that had once been reputation theater turned into interrogations. The country club whispered and aligned, and the Sullivans' polished veneer cracked like ice under a late winter sun. But the build toward climax concentrated inside Lily, an internal pressure cooker fueled by years of suppressed dignity. She navigated interviews and champagne with a steady professionalism that masked a more complicated interior, the vertigo of seeing your life reframed by strangers, the small shame of watching people who once made you small scramble for damage control. It was not solely triumph. It felt like the admission price of a life reclaimed. As the boardroom celebration subsided, Victoria pulled Lily aside with that same wry smile. "They called me hysterical," Victoria said. "They called me cold for exposing this. But I couldn't partner with people who thought so little of talent." "What do you want?" Lily asked, listening for anything cynical. "You," Victoria said, plainly. "And a partnership that reshapes hospitality standards." But also, she hesitated, softer now. "Do you want your mother to call you that? Or would you rather she call you by your name?" The question landed like a small shove. Lily wanted so much: validation, restitution, an apology that sounded like truth. But she knew recompense would not come without boundaries hard enough to keep the past at bay. She found herself drafting in her head an inventory of what she would accept: recognition, respect, equitable treatment, and, more sharply, a protective wall for her employees. That night, when the feeds cooled and the legal review wrapped, Lily opened a new document on her laptop. It was a short list: terms for any future family engagement, conditions under which stellar events would work for family events, and one blunt line: no servant roles. Ever. She emailed it to her mother with a subject line that felt impossibly mundane: terms. She did not expect softness, but she did expect performance. Instead, the reply was an implosion. Margaret's first response was righteous fury, a public fainting, the classic social scandal. But under the outrage were unlikely admissions, confusion, a sense that her story was being told without her understanding. Her world had been curated around an easier narrative, a child who fit the role she'd assigned. To have that narrative collapse felt like drowning. Meanwhile, the crescendo built for Lily in another way. Her inbox contained not only offers, but a more intimate litany: Maria's mortgage application accepted because of a signed letter, James's kids enrolled in new schools. A team's collective breath finally steadied. The stakes were no longer reputation alone. They were the real lifelines that came from work realized and respected. The climax was approaching not as a single thunderclap, but as a precise, inevitable collision: Margaret's social empire on a direct path to public unraveling, and Lily's professional world on the verge of expansion. Between them lay the thing that had always mattered more than either: the human cost of pretending someone's small for your comfort. Lily saved the document, fingers still. Tomorrow would be the moment of truth. The room at the neutral restaurant smelled of lemon peel and nervousness. Lily arrived early and arranged the single sheet of paper in front of her like a treaty. Her parents arrived later, the mother with her social armor thinned, the father a quiet ghost. Sarah came last, looking paler than usual, eyes darting like someone used to rehearsed performances in unfamiliar silence. Lily spoke first. No dramatics, no spectacle. She laid out the terms: equal respect or no family contact, no more servant roles, public acknowledgement of her work, therapy and work toward repair, and a professional apology. It read more like corporate policy than a plea, and that was intentional. She had learned that people listened to contracts. Margaret's first reaction was fury, loud as a gavel. "You humiliate us," she said. "You weaponized our name." "You used my name to mean something smaller," Lily answered, voice steady. "I used my name to mean more. That's the difference." Her father, who had said little for years, spoke in a voice that trembled with overdue honesty. "I saw the business registration once when the mail mixed up," he admitted. "I was afraid to contradict Margaret. I was complicit." It was the kind of admission that rearranged rooms. Sarah, surprisingly, did not double down. Her voice came out small, honest in a way Lily had never heard. "I needed to feel special," she said. "And I made you into the place where that happened. I'm sorry." The apology was rawer than Lily expected. For 15 years, roles had been assigned like costumes, and only now did they start being taken off. The family's collapse had been social. The repair would have to be personal. Margaret's apology followed, quieter and less polished than any of her social speeches. "I wanted a story," she said. "I wanted to be proud. I made you small to keep my place intact. I thought, if we believed it, it would be true." Lily listened and found herself softening in small measures. She accepted the apology conditionally. "I'll consider rebuilding," she said. "But on my terms. And if Stellar Events ever works for you, you will pay retail. No favors." Margaret's laugh was broken, then honest. "Fair." They set dates, therapy appointments, a family meeting with a facilitator, an added line in their public profiles acknowledging Lily's work. The terms were not revenge, they were boundaries meant to prevent replay. Outside that negotiation, the world continued to rotate. The Forbes cover hit stands at midnight, the internet cooed, cheered, and debated. Stellar Events signed 3 more contracts in the week that followed. Maria closed on her house. James moved his family. For Lily, the climax was not a single triumphant shout, but a constellation of smaller returns, restoration of dignity, the livelihood saved, the public acknowledgement made real. But the climactic moment, the one that would become anecdote for others, was Margaret's faint. A screenshot of a voicemail leaked, then the country club's whispers turned to gossip. Margaret's social standing contracted. She lost board positions and invitations. The humiliation that once belonged only to Lily ricocheted back, but with a twist: public accountability, not cruelty. Lily watched it all unfold with a strange absence of triumphalism. The point had never been to punish, it had been to be named correctly. She had wanted 2 things: to be seen and to be treated like a person, not a role. Both had been achieved, imperfectly and expensively. On a quiet evening, one not for social posts, but for simple dinner, Lily hosted a small meal in her apartment. Her staff arrived as servers, but not in the old arrangement. They worked with the professional precision of a kitchen that had dignity. Margaret and Sarah came and sat at a table set by hands that had never again been asked to obscure their labor. When Margaret raised her glass, it was not to reclaim status, but to try to reclaim something of a conversation. "I am sorry," she said simply. The words landed differently than anyone expected, not as an eraser, but as a bridge. Lily smiled, not because everything was fixed, but because for the first time she felt the soft architecture of an honest family taking tentative shape. The climax had not been a single victory. It had been the messy, consequential work of naming truth and then asking how people would answer. 3 months later, the apartment with the Central Park view felt like a small kingdom Lily had earned by blood and inventory and grace. Stellar Events had expanded into 2 new cities. The team had doubled. The Food Network documentary aired, thoughtful and unflashy, and for a moment Lily watched herself as both subject and spectator. People sent messages. You changed my life. You gave me permission. How did you stay so calm? The answers were private, a ledger of small, daily choices. Her family's world had shifted as well. Margaret had resigned 2 charity positions and started regular sessions with a therapist. The charity boards demanded accountability. The country club chatter dissolved into other scandals. Sarah's PR firm pivoted, shedding clients and rebuilding with a humbler pitch. Her first email to Lily after the meeting, one marked "Professional Proposal," was awkward but competent. Lily forwarded it to the procurement team and told Sarah, "Submit a proposal like everyone else." Her tone could have been stone, but she softened. "We'll consider it." They met again, less performative this time, at a dinner Lily hosted, catered by her own team. The employees served with a dignity that made the symmetries of the past feel like a faint bad dream. The roles had been rearranged and, for once, everyone knew their place, not by shame, but by honest labor. When Margaret stood to speak, she didn't rehearse the old lines of superiority. Instead, she told a story about fear, how it had convinced her to craft a family mythology that kept her safe. "I didn't want to lose my place," she said. "I made someone else small so I could be large. That was my cowardice." The confession landed as a small offering, and the table accepted it with cautious trust. Lily accepted the apology, but she also set a boundary that felt like a lodestar. Family would be family, but business would be business. No free labor, no erased identities. If their ties were to heal, it would be with respect, not debt. In the months that followed, stellar events continued to grow. Contracts multiplied, and Lily's phone buzzed less with outrage and more with offers to speak at conferences, to mentor women stepping into leadership roles. She said yes, often, because the work mattered beyond her own name. She hired more people who'd been underestimated and trained them not just in technique, but in the language of respect, how to ask for it, how to grant it. There were moments of tenderness that surprised her. Her father began introducing her at small club events with pride in his voice. Sarah sent a message after landing a modest account, "You inspired me to change." Margaret called sometimes, not to order, but to ask her advice on a small fundraising event. The calls were tentative. Trust takes geography. At night, when the city dimmed, Lily would walk to the window and look at the park's shadowed silhouette. She dove into the practice that made her steady, counting the names on the team roster, thinking of the families whose lives were affected by each new hire, tracing the invisible arcs that made work humane. She no longer measured her worth by their opinions. Instead, she kept a small ritual. Each morning, she wrote one line on a post-it stuck to her mirror. "I am Lily Sullivan, CEO, not servant. Be kind, be relentless." It was both promise and reminder. When people asked for the moral of her story, she refused to offer a tidy maxim. "Don't wait for the world to notice you," she said in interviews. "Build something that forces them to. But do it because you owe it to the people depending on you, not for revenge." Once, in a quiet moment, Margaret admitted something unexpected. "I was terrified," she said. "I thought if my children didn't need me, I would disappear. So I kept someone small so my role mattered." The confession was an antidote to cruelty, an explanation, not an excuse. In the end, the reversal that had felt so delicious on social media didn't become the point. The point was steadier, the work of defining yourself, protecting others who depend on you, and setting terms for belonging. Lily had gotten what so many want, acknowledgement. But she kept something else, too, a boundary that allowed her to breathe and to lead. On a winter evening, when the apartment smelled faintly of rosemary and lemon, Lily answered a message from a stranger. "I quit being small today." She smiled and typed back, "Good. Don't let them make you the story they need." Then, looking out over the city, she added one private thought to the ledger she kept in her head. Respect is the currency worth everything.